machine shop, tapping threads and turning metals non-stop every day.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the 86th episode of Taps and Patience. Did I say that right? The song was in my head. Anyway, Taps and Patience. I'm AJ here, Harrison. Hi Harrison.
How we doing?
How going?
Oh, I going good. How are you going?
Better than my words. So, I made a mistake.
What kind of a mistake?
So everybody watching on YouTube's already going to know because they're going to see the thumbnail. But I kind of turned my cell phone into a taco.
Some impromptu machining?
It was more of a forming action, less of a machining action.
Oh, that's fair enough.
So this was like Thursday or Friday or something. And like, I think it was fairly late in the evening, or I don't remember, but I wasn't like in the shop working. It was like, oh, I have a little bit of time, so I'm going to get these parts set up so I can run them tomorrow. And I was just kind of like watching YouTube videos and having fun, like just kind of like relaxed working. I was making progress, but really I was just hanging out. And I went to, what was I doing? I was setting a tool and, watching a YouTube video, and I put my phone down on the table of my mill, closed the door, hit the button to go set the tool. And the machine went and did a rapid to get to a place where it could do a safe tool change, which I wasn't really expecting, or wasn't thinking about, I should say. And in the course of that rapid, it took my phone and shoved it between my flux vise and the frame of my door. It just bent my phone, not quite 180 degrees, Taco, but probably 120 degrees.
Did it error out the machine, or was the machine like, oh yeah, that's normal?
Oh, the machine could not have cared less, yeah. It could taco phones all day.
Oh, man.
Like, oh, that's not what I wanted to happen today.
And when did this happen?
What day is it today? Today's Monday. It must have been a Friday, because I think, my buddy Scott was coming up to hang out, and I was killing some time before he got there.
Oh, man.
And it was like, well, I guess I need a new phone now.
So what's the replacement plan for this? Just gonna get a new one?
Yeah, I've my last couple of phones, I've just bought a used Android phone. And so it's not like I just crumpled a brand new iPhone 15 or whatever they're on now. So I don't know. I almost ordered a Pixel 7a. Like, I had pressed the order button, and then I went and I canceled it on Amazon because I realized that the Pixel 7, which is a nicer phone than the 7a, is actually cheaper.
Oh,
and
nice.
I just haven't gotten around to ordering that one yet. But I'm not going to lie, I kind of like not having a phone.
Is it allowing you to focus more?
Me. It's not hurting. I will need one because, like, if I go somewhere and need to transfer money from my bank, or, call my wife and tell her I'm stuck in a ditch or something. But
you don't deal with customers directly, though, because you do so much Xometry.
No. Yeah, in fact, even on my business cards, I don't have my phone number. I just have my email address because I don't want people calling me because I don't answer my phone during the day.
See, that's interesting, because my business would fall apart if I didn't have my phone. It's constantly going off, it seems like.
I can't say that attitude is necessarily helping me, but I just hate phone calls. Like, there is nothing that annoys me more than like trying to work and getting a phone call.
Yeah. Speaking of phone calls, I've gotten several interesting ones today.
Uh-oh.
So, my Tormach went from no one's interested to everyone's interested.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I've got 3 interested buyers basically in one day.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
So, we'll see what happens. I've got one who found it online, and then one who we've been in contact with, but I wasn't sure if they were interested, and so we sent back and asked them if they were still interested, and they said they were. They were just out of town. And then another one who found us on Facebook Marketplace and wants to have some videos shot of it and is interested in buying it. So 3 interested parties all of a sudden, which is exciting
That's
because
good.
that thing needs to go.
Yep, you need that out of there.
So
Slap in a Speedio or a DT or something.
yeah, which we'll get into that because I have I like to joke with Weston last week, or no, yeah, last week. We went from being dead to being dead. Like dead as in like no work to dead to overloaded and we're gonna die. So it's gonna be interesting and there's a lot of
Speedio.
potential.
Speedio.
Yeah.
Speedio.
I am on the Speedio bandwagon. My cousin has not right now. Um, he he hasn't he doesn't deal with the Instagram community and stuff as much. He just wants to get a machine that's basically the same as what we've already gotten, the Haas, or a he'd really like a Doosan, and I'd like a Doosan too. Um, like I said, I think last week we went and looked at a Doosan SVM 4100 that a local guy had, and I
He
really like
likes
that machine.
he likes
It
the
was sweet.
40 taper, right? That's what he's hung
Yeah,
up on.
he's hung up on the 40 taper.
Yeah.
He's had the Tormach, and he's like, I don't want another 30 taper machine, and I'm like,
It's a different class.
different class. So, like, I get it. It's not a 40 taper, but if you're taking light, fast cuts, it doesn't need to be. And to be honest, we're not really taking that big of cuts on the 40 taper that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't. There's very few cuts on that machine that with a rigid Speedio, I wouldn't feel comfortable taking. So
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of videos on what those things are capable of, and they're capable of a lot. So the big thing that I am in agreement with him on is that we need something with at least 30 inches in X.
Hmm.
So I am in agreement on that.
Is that would that cover like how much do you really need to cover, let's say, 75% of your parts or 80% of your parts? Do you need 30 inches to cover 80%? Or could a machine with 18 inches cover 80% of your parts?
So the deal is getting one and done. A machine with 18 inches could do
I mean,
all the
without shifting your part.
yeah. A thing is, there's not very many things that we do that are over 18 inches. Because we pretty much doing all the same parts we are doing now as we did on the Tormach days. Except we need more Y than the Tormach had, which was about 11 inches. And so a 30 by 16 is kind of the size we're leaning towards. And that would a 20 by 16 would cover the majority of the parts that we're doing, but we also want to have a fourth axis on it, and I really don't want to have to take it on and off.
Yeah.
And so I would be okay with doing the Pearson system where you just kind of put a winch on it and take it up into the corner.
I like Pearson, but that's a crazy system.
No, I like it. I like it a lot.
VF2s, those are 20 by 40s, right? Or in that ballpark?
No. VF2 is not a 20 by 40. That's a VF4.
Okay.
VF2 is 30 by 16.
Okay.
And then a VF1 is a 20 by 16.
But they take up the same floor space, so that doesn't
But
really
they take
matter.
up the same floor space.
Because you're floor space constrained more than anything.
We did find out that we can fit another VF4 in there with like 2 inches to spare.
Okay.
Next to our current machine. Something like
clearance is clearance.
And so and then there is that shop that closed down or is closing in the process of closing down. Which that's another whole topic. I would buy one of their VF4s if I could get a good deal on it, and I would find a way to fit it in the shop. But changing gears because I got thinking about that. When they closed down, the company I do the majority of the work for currently, they bought all of the parts that they had on the shelf, which was like 50, 60 grand worth of parts, and it was a lot of stuff that we did. So I feel like even in the long term, we're going to get a lot more work because that shop closed down. But in the short term, the little work we were getting is going to probably evaporate because they got a whole bunch of extra parts that they weren't planning on getting, that they're just going to have in
Okay.
inventory.
Until it runs
So
out.
until it runs out. So, or unless they're made bad or something like that. I don't know. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting, to say the least, at least on that front. And then on the other side of the equation, I have a new customer that I've done one or two jobs with so far, and they just gave me a big job. Well, it's a big job for us. It's a 400 piece order with the potential to turn into an 8,000 piece reoccurring order.
Dude, that's nuts. That would be so good. Assuming they're high value parts.
Well, the parts cost is going to be in the $20 range, is what they've been buying them for. Um, but that's still, that one part from that one customer would be more money than we've made in our first year for sure, and it would be 60 to 70% of the money we made our second year. And that would just be an kind of an open PO. And he said, like the guy said, he's like, we can take it in weekly, monthly, yearly, however you want to divvy it out if we give you the work. It's just as long as we don't run out of parts, that's all that matters.
Yeah. So that's like almost 700 parts a month.
Yeah, something like that.
So a
I
couple
can do that
hundred a
math real
week.
quick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll keep you busy.
666. We'll call it 667.
How big are those parts?
They're gonna be um roughly basically iPod case size, AirPod
Get a
case size.
Speedio.
So
Don't do those on a VF.
so well, the VF wasn't planned for these parts. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So the VF was planned for uh, other jobs that we have coming up that that are going to be. So our parts from our first customer are getting bigger, and this new customer that we got, their parts are smaller. So most of their parts are this size, high volume, this size parts. Whereas our main job shop work we've been doing, that shop that closed down, they did all the big stuff, and so our parts are getting bigger, 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 bigger from
Yeah.
that customer, and we got a new customer where we're getting small, high volume stuff, which is perfect because I really need a VF2, and then I'm going to need like a Speedio size machine. Really needs to be 5 axis and would really needs to have some sort of automation on it.
So so those smaller parts are not suitable for high density work holding, I'm guessing.
Some of them will be. Right now I'm only looking. I've seen 3 parts so far. So I had the potential to do. What's here? 400. I could have gotten 1,300 parts from them, but I couldn't meet the deadline, and so I couldn't guarantee the deadline. And so I only ended up with 400 of them, and 900 of them went to another company. And so, if I had the capacity, um, and I could get those parts back, that's 3 parts that would be huge for us. It'd be basically those 3 parts would be double or triple what we've ever made in a single year. And I would definitely put those on a machine. So,
Haas is having a fire sale on UMC 350s.
oh, they are? I
Yeah,
hadn't
no
looked.
one wants them. I haven't checked in a couple days, but last I saw they were around 90K.
Oh, they've been that for a while though.
Yeah, okay.
Um, but they really need to drop those down to around 70K, and then they'd have a lot more interested parties, I think.
Oh yeah. Even
So,
even for their used, well, they're not used. They're like rejected first generation that
mhm.
for some reason nobody wants.
Yeah, why is
I've
that?
I've never actually heard a good list of complaints against them other than the tool changer's too small.
Yeah, and Saunders not selling his anymore. Did you see that?
I think he gave up on selling it. I don't think anybody wanted it.
Well, he decided to keep it, is what he said in his video. But yes, it could be that no one
He
wanted to buy
decided
it.
to keep it after attempting to sell it for a while and not succeeding.
Yes, that could be.
I think he couldn't get enough for it to cover the remainder of the loan. And
That
so
could
he's
be.
like, well, do you know what? It's a spindle. Might as well use it for prototyping. Like,
Yeah. It's like people complain about it, but at the same time, it has just about as many tools as a Speedio would um
yeah.
with a 5-axis. So
Again, I have just never heard a summary of why it's a bad machine.
yeah, because like people are like, well, it's just that trunnion bolted onto it, and I'm using that trunnion. And my only complaint with the trunnion that I have is that if I put too much tool pressure on it, it moves because I don't have a good way to really mount it to my machine. But if it was firmly mounted and like had pinned and welded in place or something where it wasn't going to move, it's a great 5-axis machine that's held great tolerances. The only problem I have is if it moves, then it's annoying.
Can you just pin it to your table?
Um, I could. I don't know if I want to do that yet. So I don't know. Like there's other solutions there,
Or make a
and
subplate for it?
yeah, there's subplate. There's pinning it to my machine. Um, the thing is I'm too scared to do anything right now, and it's the machine that's doing 90% of my work, and I don't really want to play around with it until I get some
Boring
more
a hole in the
spindles in.
table?
Yeah, yeah. So that might happen at some point, but not today.
I wonder. I wonder if like a fixture plate would help you or something.
I don't know. It's got 5 bolts holding it down through T slots. Is it 5 or is it 4? It might just be 4. I think it's 4 actually, not 5. Um and I put a lot of really big parts on it here recently, and just the amount of leverage they have out on the extremes, I think is what's doing it.
Interesting.
And so um it hasn't, knock on wood, it hasn't moved in a while. Um, it's been pretty stable, but the only problems I have had with it on anything that I've known so far has been A, it moves, or B, the vise moves.
Yeah.
But the device moving is not a problem with the trunnion, that's the problem with the vise. So
Are you saying you have observed both of these, or these are both potential causes and you are unsure which it is?
I have observed both and I have seen both. And I have worked around both. Um, so I've had parts move where they move the vise, but the trunnion's fine, and I've had parts where the trunnion has been fine, or where the vise has been fine and the trunnion has moved.
Okay, interesting. And do you just like run your calibration cycle weekly, or how do you stay on top of that?
Usually I need to check it more frequently than I do, or come up with a schedule. But usually, anytime I'm running a super critical part, I have gotten in the habit of, if I'm going to run something that's super tight tolerances and needs to be perfect, I will check the 5-axis. The first thing I will do is I'll check the probe, make sure it's running concentric, make sure that it's calibrated and that everything's good there. Then I will check my vise and make sure it's running tram to the 0 point, because that seems to be what happens. Is it seems to just twist
Yeah.
about zero point 0.2 degrees. It seems to have about 0.2 degrees of wiggle that it can move every once in a while. Um, and so I'll re-zero that and make sure everything's tightened down. Um, and it is pinned, but it still has a little bit of wiggle.
Yeah,
Um,
like a thou of clearance on a dowel hole over the course of however long will add up to be.
yeah, pretty much. That's kind of the problem there. And um, and so I got just a little bit of play that I'll have every once in a while in that. So I'll check that, and then I'll put in the little ball and I'll run it through different points. And usually I have around a thou. The best I've had has been about 6 or 7 tenths, but average seems to be around a thou and a half of run out on the extremes. So, but so far it's been producing parts in spec. as long as I make sure everything is in the place it needs to be. So I only have problems when things get bumped. So
I feel like I don't have a whole lot to talk about this week. I ran a couple parts and they went smoothly, except for the whole crunching my phone thing. Though I would like to point out on those parts where I crunched my phone, I still did make a profit if you include the replacement cost of the phone.
oh really?
Yeah.
Now go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna move on and say I've been using my new little setup sheet slash checklist there for all the parts I've been taking, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely helping kind of maintain the flow better and keep me from making dumb mistakes. So
So
we'll see if
you
I
didn't get
stick to it.
behind.
But it's a win. No, I shipped parts early,
Nice.
which is not something I have a great track record of doing. So
um, do you have that part I sent you? I want to talk about that next.
yeah.
Okay. So this is an open question for the community at large that listens to this podcast. This is on that large part order I've kind of talked about. It's got kind of this oval egg-shaped profile, and I can ball end mill that radius around the edge, and that's probably what I'm going to be doing. But through some testing, I've used the 2D contour toolpath, and I've selected those individual radiuses sections, and then I can use the 2D contour wrap function to make that radius profile. But then I have to break it up into different sections, piece by piece, because they're different radiuses. So I'm trying to find a singular toolpath where I can do one pass all the way around, following the contour that's going both in and out and up and down with the radius tool. And I haven't found out a good way to do that in Fusion. And it might not be possible in Fusion. I've talked to Dylan a little bit about this, and neither one of us could really think of a good way to do it other than like ball milling it or segmenting it. And so I'm wondering if there is a way that can be done on uh, Fusion, which might not be possible, and probably isn't at this stage, based on what I've discovered so far. Um, or B, is there another cam software out there, Mastercam, Gibbs, something else that can do that toolpath where you can kind of treat it like a fourth axis, but go and follow that contour around? I'd be curious to see what anyone says on that. So, anyways, that's the problem I'm trying to figure out, because right now to ball mill it, I think it's about 4 minutes. And if I could save, and I think I lied to you, AJ, earlier, but if I could save, say I went from 4 minutes down to a minute with the, because this is an aluminum, so I can go pretty fast. If I save 3 minutes times 8,000 parts, divide by 60, divide by 40, that would save me 10 weeks of work if I get this job. So that one toolpath would save me a month and 2 months, 2.5 months of machine time.
Yeah. Um, a couple of thoughts. So before the podcast, we talked about using Flow, which may or may not work. One thing you might have to do if you use Flow, and this would be a pain, but is to delete out the chamfer and then remodel it as a single sweep, because Flow uses what are called are they the UV or the UW, something like that. I think it's the UV. They use the UV curves of your model
Mm-hmm.
to form the toolpath, to guide the toolpath. And
Mm-hmm.
those UV curves are determined when the part is modeled. And a lot of the times, if you just use
Gotcha.
a fillet or a chamfer tool, you end up with uglier UV curves as opposed to doing it with a single sweep.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's one thing to consider. The other thing is, couldn't you just do this with you'd get a little bit of like weird distortion, but could you do it with a 3-axis toolpath just from the top and just follow the curve up and down?
No, because of these slopes.
It would change like the radius or something.
It would gouge.
Would it gouge?
It would gouge. It would gouge majorly. Um, and so like um, because it's going out wide, the top of that radius tool is wide, and if it's following that line, it's going to gouge on the back half.
I suppose you're right.
So um, on the front side, it'd be fine, but on the back side, it would just gouge. Or if you're going up the slope, it would ram into the material before it even hit the flutes, technically. So up would probably even be worse.
What about a spindle speeder?
Oh, for the ball milling, we talked about that, and that's another option I'm looking into. Because I do have 3 spindle coolant, and I could run a spindle speeder to speed that up. And that would help.
You have 10k RPM,
12.
12k. So a spindle speeder could probably get you to like 30k.
Yeah.
Which would remove a bunch of the time. Not all of it, but a bunch of
Yeah.
it.
I mean, if you looked at it as a direct 1-to-1, that would be a 2 point. What would that be, like a 2.5 or 2.4 times increase? So take you from 4 minutes to a minute and a half, which would be close to what you could do with uh, yeah, that'd be pretty close to what you could do with the radius tool.
That that might be the safer, easier way.
It might be. I'm looking for different options, and honestly, at this point, this has become a fun challenge that I
Yeah.
want to figure out. Like it the annoying thing is that I can piece it together and I can make it work. And we talked about this as well. I can use contour wrap and I can select each individual radius section and then do that segment in one go. And then I could even copy all that code out and paste it together and make like hand edit all the different sections and join them together and take the lead ins and lead outs out and make it one continuous wrap. Um, but that's going to be a pain in the butt, and I don't really want to do that. And if I had to change anything, it'd be almost impossible to go back in there, or it wouldn't be impossible. It'd just be a pain to go back in there and update that toolpath. But it could be done. And once I got the program locked down, it would hopefully never be a problem. But if a tool wore or I needed to move it in or out a couple thou, it'd be a pain.
Yep, it would.
So, anyways, it's an interesting problem. The machine can do it. It can do it in small sections. And what's really annoying is I had a very similar problem to this on a different part, but it used an end mill, or it was an end mill or a ball end mill. I don't remember which it was, and it worked fine. Like I forget which toolpath I used, and I think it was with a ball end mill because it could get off at an angle and it would have been fine. It just needed to ride the. I think it rode the changing diameter fine. But the problem with this one is that I need to stay perpendicular to the curved surface
Yeah.
while it's going round. And so you need a way to basically define it to stay perpendicular to that curved surface and go up and down and in and out, which I can do in small segments. So anyways, interesting challenge. Would love to see if there's a way to make that happen. Anyways.
Or you could just buy a Speedio, and then not only do you have a second spindle, but you also have a really zippy little spindle that will save you time on the rest of the part.
When this job actually, if I ever do get this job and it actually does go into production, I will get another machine and it will have automation on it, and this will become not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I will get these parts in the long run. There's a lot of if, ands, and buts, and this is an immediate problem that I can at least has an immediate effect on me today.
Yeah.
Because if I can solve this,
until there's a PO, you aren't buying a spindle speeder or a Speedio or.
Yeah, exactly. This is the cheapest, fastest solution if I can get it to work. Not to say there's not other solutions out there, which is why I'm curious if other CAM softwares can handle this better. And if there's other ideas besides spindle speeders, ball milling, or using a radius tool, if there's another idea out there, I'd love to hear it. This is more of an exercise at this point in what options exist and what other methods are out there that I'm unaware of. Because I think it's a interesting problem to try to figure out. Because it doesn't come up very often. At least
No.
I haven't seen it very often. But I've had
Even
problems similar. Go ahead.
even chamfers that go up and down slopes like that can be challenging.
Well, I just did a zometry part, and the deburr toolpath worked perfectly. I had
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what the part was. That's the toolpath I'm thinking of. I used the deburr toolpath
Uh-huh.
on the Xometry titanium job I just got done with, or I did it and it's a one and done, and it had curved surfaces at different angles, and the deburr toolpath followed it perfectly. Maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe I need to use this. Maybe I need to delete the chamfer, use it as a deburr toolpath, and then just put in the radius tool. And then once I can get the offsets right, it'll be good.
I know the deburr toolpath does fillets too.
Yeah,
I don't know how that works, but I know there's a checkbox for it.
yeah. The deburr toolpath does it because I just used this with the deburr, so it did it perfectly with the deburr toolpath. I just need to find a way to incorporate the radius tool. Either just by I won't program it as a radius tool, I'll program it as a chamfer tool, and then I might have to draw a line at the point where I want it to actually go at. But that would do it. That would do it. And then I can adjust the line and move it around. I think I might have just solved my own problem. I mean,
That would be
there's more work to it,
yeah.
but it's something that I can move that line in space if I define it properly. There's just other solutions to this. Like this is a path that would work with Fusion today. Um, it just might be a lot of work, but it'll be work that is repeatable and editable more than anything else. That's what it really needs. It needs to be editable. It needs to be something that I can dial in and get it cutting perfectly.
Yeah.
I like
On
this.
kind of a similar note, where I'm yelling at you about Speedios, we have Patreons who I'm
Ooh,
sure are speedy. Uh, we'll go into the whole Patreon pitch later, but we have some Q&A questions for this week. One of which comes from Jake Brownson, and he says, "What is your dream machine if you had an unlimited budget?"
ooh. Hmm. What are the parts I'm running on it
For your business? I'm
for
going to
my?
answer this one right now. It's pretty obvious for me and the stuff I do. It's a Kern. There's no way
Yeah,
about it. Like, Kern checks all my boxes. But I
yeah,
think because your business is a little bit more, well, it's just different than mine. It's less
yeah,
niche.
yeah. I would say probably something like a Hermley would be with some sort of automation cell attached to it. Would probably be the dream. Now, what size Hermley? I don't know. I'm still figuring out the parts. I'm growing parts with one customer and I'm shrinking parts with a new one. So I don't know. That sounds like two different machines to me. Um, but I really like the and I don't think they get enough love. The Grobes.
Mm-hmm.
That's another machine I was thinking of.
Yep.
Um, they seem to be a really sweet machine. And if you ever watch that automation tour with Saunders, I forget the name of the guy, but it's like an hour and a half long video. He's got like 2 or 3 Grobes with a row of pallet systems. Oh man, I drool over that setup. That would probably be one of my dream setups right there. Um, the fact that they're a horizontal 5-axis that can have really long tools and um, yeah, something like that would be awesome. Yeah, I like that a lot.
I think that'd be pretty cool. I also like the Makino machines. I hope that's the right brand I'm thinking of. They have a lot of kind of specialty, like high precision and tool and mold stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know nothing about them because their website sucks and they're such niche machines that nobody has them on YouTube. But uh,
Yeah.
those look pretty sweet.
Yep.
And
Okay.
while we're doing Q&As, we have another question from Prescott from Onesie Twosie Systems. He says, he says, "I'm familiar with the machining side of things, but not the business side. What does your order workflow for non-Xometry job shop look like? from first contact to RFQ to quotes, back and forth, requoting, etc., PO acknowledgments, ship parts, invoice, payments. So basically, our workflows for everything except machining the parts.
Okay. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I can go first because my systems are by far the most simple here because I take very little work that's not Xometry work. We send emails back and forth until I get a PO, and then I have a spreadsheet that I use for quoting, which is heavily based off of information that I get from toolpath.com. And then once I get a PO, I print out a traveler that looks just like this that has all of the information that I need and like my checklists. And then I make the part, and then I put the part in a box and I ship it. Yep. My systems aren't complicated because they don't need to be at this point.
So for us, if I get, there's several different points of contact. I can get a phone call, I can get an email, or I can get an inquiry from our website. So those are usually the 3 avenues, or someone could show up at my door. So the 4 avenues of getting a new customer without me going out and actually acquiring them. Once we start the communications, it usually goes through email. And I usually use monday.com to create a job number. And then we have a template folder on OneDrive that we copy and put that job number in. So if I get an RFQ from a customer, I will put that job into Monday and put a small description as well as the customer, and it has a dates field. And if they have a due date, I'll put it in there. And if I'm just bidding, I'll leave it. And then I'll move that into a bidding location on monday.com saying that I'm bidding it. At that point, I will create a job folder for it. We have it broke down by year, and then by customer, and then by job. So if I had a new customer, I'd go to 2024. I'd put in company X or company Y as a folder, and then I'd create a new subfolder inside that folder and it'd say job number XXX with a description at the end. Once I have that folder created, I will go in there. It already has accounting, it has shipping and receiving, it has customer documents, it has CAD documents, it has media, and 1 or 2 other folders, inspection and something else. And then I will go into the accounting folder. In there, we'll have a bid sheet. We'll have or a quote sheet. We'll have a Word document that we can fill out with the customer's information when we're ready to send them a proposal. And there's 1 or 2 other documents in there that I don't normally use, but they're in there for specific cases. Then I'll usually go into the bid sheet and I will bid out however many parts they have, which is usually just going through. We do have access to toolpath.com, but right now our tool library is an absolute mess because we are in the middle of changing it over from from Tormach to Haas tooling, and we're in the process of eliminating a lot of tools and redoing tool speeds, and we don't have any nomenclature for materials or features, and so we have close to 300 or plus tools to go through and haven't had a whole lot of time to do it yet. So what that means is a lot of manual bidding, and so we've kind of got a back of the napkin method for doing that. We got to figure out the material if we're saw cutting it, or if we're buying the material pre-cut. We got to figure out what machine we're running it on, what's the operator time, what's the machine time. We got to figure out if there's going to be soft jaws, if there's going to be secondary processes such as tumbling, anodizing, laser engraving, and such, welding, assembly. There's a whole bunch of different stuff on the quote sheet. But anyways, we go through all that, and we get a price. We fill out the quote sheet. We send it off. And so from that point on, we're waiting for a PO or some sort of acknowledgement. If I don't hear back from them when I send off the PO, I will put a date in Monday. And if I don't hear back from them within a week, that'll tell me that I need to reach out to them and say, hey, have you looked over the PO? looked over a proposal or anything, and at that point, we might not be awarded that job, or the customer might be like, "Oh, I forgot about it." Whatever. It's just a way for me to kind of tap them on the shoulder and be like, "Hey, haven't heard from you. What's up?" And say we do get the job. At that point, we will take the PO and we will stick it in that folder. So we have, we'll put it in the accounting folder. So we have a record that we got a purchase order. Um, we will then print out, if we have prints for the job, we will print out all the prints that the customer has sent. If we don't have prints for the job, we will make some for key features to check. And we will print them out. And when we print them out, we have a little label that we stick on it. And that label has the job number, quantity, um, material size, and it has the times for saw cutting, machining, if we're doing any finishing processes. It just basically it's a sticker that we put on it that goes with the job and the print as it's going through the various stages of the business to keep track of what it actually took to get the part done. And so at the end of that, we'll take all that information. If the job was pre-bid, then we use those numbers to evaluate how close we got to our target. If it was sent as an open PO, then we will use those numbers to generate a price based at the end of the job. Because we do have customers that'll be like, "Hey, we want X amount of this part. Send us a price when you're done." At that point, it's just time and materials, and so they get charged at whatever that takes. And so from there, we do any finishing processes, inspection, and then shipping. We either deliver it if they're local, or we'll mail it out, and then we send them an invoice. That's more or less what we do. I could probably get into more specifics on individual items, but I don't really want to go too deep into the weeds. I've already gone pretty deep in a couple places. So, anyways, there's that.
Yep. Fun other process stuff. That's like the stuff that actually takes all the time and effort when you run a manufacturing business.
Yeah.
Like machining parts, I mean, that's fun and all, but most of the time it's either like a small run that you just kind of work through and like, you're doing like 5 parts and it doesn't take you very long. And then you get your parts, or it's like a big run and you get to the point where you're just pressing the button and then going and taking care of all the overhead.
Yeah. And whenever we get the PO and we do the prints, that's also when we do material ordering and tool ordering as well. So,
I have a kind of continuation of that topic that I want to get to. But before I do that, let's do the formal plug for the Patreon. We have a Patreon and people who back us that we greatly appreciate. Those people include, but are not limited to, Eric, Alexander, Scott at Design the Everything, Jamie at JSpec Engineering. I'm doing great already. Chris Zajic with Zajic Precision, EJ at Nocturnal Welding, Simon, Chris from Thought Bomb Design, and of course, Jake Brownson. Brownson. Yeah, I said that right. I've been recording videos all day and for the Fusion stuff, and I just can't keep track of the words that I say anymore. So I apologize if I'm saying dumb things. All Patreons at any level get access to this weekly Q&A. If you are a paid member at any tier, then you get access to these episodes early via YouTube video. And if you are Eric, that means you get to record the awkward goodbye. Eric, shoot me a message and we'll get you set up to record that, by the way. So thanks to all Patreons. We have a couple more Patreons whose names I did not read. They are at the $4 a month tier, but they still get access to all the cool things. And we appreciate every single one of you. While I'm doing announcements, we will be having a meetup at IMTS on Monday at 2 p.m. in the Tormach booth. Harrison and I will be there. I'm sure at least, I don't know, someone else will be there probably. If not, you can come look at the cool Tormach machines with us. It doesn't like cost anything other than going to IMTS, but out of curiosity, if you're interested in coming to that, shoot me a message. either on Instagram or email aj@audacitymicro.com. I just want a general idea of how many people are coming. If it's like a bunch of people, I may be able to like convince Tormach to, I don't know, give us popsicles or something too. But um, we all right. Last announcement. We are a podcast on podcast players. We also have a YouTube channel. If you watch the YouTube channel, the podcast exists. If you only listen to the podcast, the YouTube channel exists. I think it's all my announcements.
Was there any other questions, or was it just those two?
Oh, so those were the questions from the Q&A this week. I had kind of a continuation of the business processes thought. So my goal right now, like as a shop, is to streamline my process, like the whole process as much as possible. And I'm kind of trying to figure out what I can automate and like what I should automate first and what's not worth my time automating. And just like, how far do you think an automated machine shop could realistically go? Like, what parts of machining and like the business as a whole do you think shouldn't be automated or can't be automated?
So I've been trying to figure this out myself because automation is the next step. I'm hoping to learn a lot by going to IMTS. That is like the number one thing I want out of IMTS is to get a more grounded feeling for automation. It's such a buzzword and it's what everyone's striving for, but there's so many different ways you can go about it. I honestly don't know. I have a lot of different ideas, but I don't know which would be the best. And I think there is a lot of auxiliary processes that can be automated before the machining. And that is definitely something we are working on. The problem is you don't. What's a good way to put it? Well, it's not as sexy for one. But for two, there's so many other little things that come up in the day to day that I don't know if any one automation would solve the bulk of your problems. It's all like building blocks. And whatever your bottleneck is one day will change from day to day and as the company grows. And I don't know, I'm getting off track and I'm kind of losing my train of thought. But yeah, I don't know. That's a hard one.
Well, so basically, if we think of the process as like quoting, we'll just call it like part management, then programming, stock prep, machining, inspection, shipping. Right? Those are kind of the major processes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So quoting is basically something that can be handled by paying companies money. Like if you like you can just pay what are they called? Not Toolpath, paperless parts. You can pay paperless parts money and they will be able to set up a thing where customers can just come to your website and get quotes. So that's done. Of course, there will be an occasional hands-on, exceptions to the rules, yada yada yada. But by just paying money, you can automate that. In terms of like the business management stuff and, making sure that you're sending out quotes and following up emails or whatever, you can automate a lot of that through a CRM or ERP. Again, that's just kind of a software problem that you can throw money at. Obviously, it's not that easy, but it's very doable. So that stock prep, you could either outsource, like you could just order pre-cut stock, or you could have a automated saw. So that's pretty much a solved problem. Obviously, there's downsides to both of those. But even an inefficient, like if you're inefficient at sawing, it's also really not that big of a problem.
Yeah. Well, the more I'm kind of sitting here listening to you talking, it can be kind of broke down into two different categories of automation. You have your subscription automation, which is a continuous service that
Mm-hmm.
you're paying for, and you have your one-time big cost automation, which is automation that you buy that it costs a lot up front, but once that money is spent, you gain the benefits over a longer period of time. And so one of them is a continuous drain. Like, I feel like the subscription form of automation, you need to either be a massive company where it is such a small percentage that it just is a no-brainer, and there's other things that you would spend like, it's saving you far more money than you're spending. And then for smaller shops like us, I feel like for example, paperless parts, they're what, $500 to $1,000 a month or more. Some, I don't remember what they are, but they're expensive.
Yeah.
They're like a machine payment's worth, and it's like, I'm not spending that much time, quoting parts to justify that cost, and it's a reoccurring cost every single month. Versus, I could spend that money on a machine, and if I have the right work and the right parts, it could be making me money while I'm sleeping.
Yes.
And see, I think that type of automation is the type of automation that can compound and make you lots more money, versus the other types of automation make you more efficient while you're there, but you still have to do something for them to be, like, you have to do something for all of them to be effective, but um they make your time more efficient, but they don't necessarily um make, like I could have 10 machines fully automated, um but and that's a one-time fee. But if I'm automating the quoting and I'm the only one that's quoting, that's saving one person's time, not 10 people's time.
Yeah, I think there's also something to be said for considering like 90% automations versus 100% automations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot easier to get something 90% automated and just
Mm-hmm.
like have a human do the last 10%.
Yep.
Um, for example, Cam. So, like with my templates, I would say that's probably about 90% automated right now. But like that last 10%, I don't think there's any amount of money and effort that I could throw into that would close that last 10% realistically.
Mm-hmm.
Like the solution is start a startup and you know invent a new CAD software. Like 90% is really good for that, and I don't see any reason to waste too much more time on improving that. Same thing with like saw cutting. Like an automated saw, it it basically you're there. Like yes, you have to load the bar into the
Mm-hmm.
saw, but it still covers 90% of the work. And I think that kind of goes with stuff like quoting too, where, a really, really good spreadsheet or like a quick, Python program where you just type in the numbers that you need to type in and hit go. Like you don't really need the 100% automation there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's there's so many different ways to skin a cat, and the truth of the matter is, as long as you are improving your efficiency, whether it's through some fancy form of automation or if it's through making tools that don't automate your time but speed you up, they will benefit you. All of those different methods will benefit the business overall. And the thing is you have to be doing all of them on some level all the time. And that's how you get more efficient. Like, when we first moved into the shop, we didn't have hardly any tool holders for our new machine. That was inefficient because every time I got a job, I was pulling out 10 tool holders and changing out all the different tools to be able to run a job. And it literally took us, I was slower on that machine, even though my parts were running faster than I was on the Tormach. And it was just a tool holder problem. And now that I've got that problem, I won't say solved, but I'm only having to replace 2 or 3 tools at most per job. I've got most of my tools in that I use on a regular in a holder of some kind. Um, they're not the best holders, but that stuff takes money, and you're always improving, you're always growing, and trying to find the most growth in the moment is what you should be doing as a business, and that's going to be different for every single business. But they're all different areas that need to be hit, and any one area is neglected for too long, it'll become a pain point.
What are your thoughts on automating inspection? Because that's like one of the hangups I have. Like, I can see a path to automating basically everything else. Maybe not shipping. There's no reason for me to automate shipping,
Mm-hmm.
but like inspection, that is a major time suck. And I mean, you could buy a CMM, but the CMM programming software that's out there sucks. And so I don't know if it's not saving you time unless you're doing a ton of them.
So, I believe you can write inspection programs in Fusion.
I don't think a CMM would take those.
It might not, but it's something to consider because I see videos of shops that they'll run their parts on a 0 point system.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have the same 0 point system set up on their CMM. They will take the part off without taking it off the vise, but keeping it on that 0 point system, stick it in their CMM, inspect it, and then they can make changes and put it back in the machine and remachine it all while it's sitting on that 0 point system the whole time.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate solution that I see right now.
The problem is like linking your model into the CMM. I don't really actually this should probably be on my to-do list for IMTS. Is I have heard about how bad all of those interfaces are for programming parts on the CMM,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never actually touched one. So
Yeah.
maybe at IMTS someone can show me how to use one and I can decide how much it sucks.
This is why right now I am just um a random dude on the internet who plays around being a machinist. And I'm hoping that IMTS will shed a lot of light on my inexperience and what actually is out there in the market. Because at this point, I don't even know what I don't even know. Like, I feel like I'm pretty encased in the machining world. Like I'm always on Instagram. I'm always looking up stuff, but at the same time, watching videos and reels and all this stuff doesn't make you a machinist. I mean, you learn information, but it's one thing for me to show you, this is an or an AirPods case, and it's got this little flippy handle and whatnot, and you're like, oh, okay, that's simple, and then you're like, but you don't know the feel of the magnet or how it clicks, and like you get so much more input by actually having it in your hand, holding it, using it, than a video will ever be able to convey. And
Well, and there's a little bit of a bubble with the community. Like, for example, we all know and love Kern.
mhm,
But you talk to anybody who's not like this, like in this specific little corner of the instant machinist community, and they have no idea what a kern is, not a clue.
mhm,
Um, but all of our friends, are drooling over him.
yeah. And the only reason we're drooling over them is probably realistically because Grimsmo got a Kern and started putting out videos about it. How many other machines like a Kern exist that we don't know about because it's such a niche machine? You know, it just hasn't, and there hasn't been a big YouTube personality who's picked it up.
Yeah. So this is what IMTS kind of helps with.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to like walking through and seeing what's there. What are some things that I had opinions on, but I don't have experience with, because there's that list is long. I have a lot of opinions and I have very little experience.
Yeah. The downside of IMTS is, of course, everything that's being shown there is being shown by a salesperson, and they are, of course, being painted in the best possible light. So you don't
That is also true.
always get the like down and dirty, like realistic view at IMTS, unfortunately.
Yeah, but you will run into a lot of characters who have had experience with those different
Yes.
machines.
The people of IMTS are more important than the show, honestly.
Yes, because that is such a glob of knowledge. Although I will say, I enjoyed my time down at the event
Titans
in
thing.
Texas, Titan
Yeah.
of CNC event. Yes, but it was not as educational as I was hoping it would be, and so I'm hoping IMTS is not that way. Um, Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Well, at IMTS, it's not like you're going to go and attend a lecture.
Yeah.
Like the learning from IMTS comes from intentionally asking questions. You can walk through all of the halls of IMTS and ooh and ah and pretty machines and not learn a single thing other
Mm-hmm.
than maybe some new brand names. But the learning in IMTS comes from talking to smart people. You know, you get to go
Mm-hmm.
talk to, Dylan Jackson, who at this point has talked to just about every machinist alive.
Yep.
And you can talk to, I don't know, some old machinist you've never heard of, but he's been running machines for the past 40 years. Like,
Mm-hmm. You can talk to those people, but for me, and this is probably why I was unable to take as much of advantage at Titans, is um unless you have a problem that's on the back of your head, it's really hard to comb through the vast amounts of knowledge that each person will have.
yes.
And that's something that I guess I haven't figured out how to do, is to go to those events, talk to people, and learn those, those little tidbits of those little gold nuggets that they have, without knowing what, it's digging without knowing what you're digging for. When you find, like, I've had experiences where I talk to someone and they have that little nugget that I needed, and it's just like amazing when those happen. It's like, oh my goodness, this is the best thing since sliced bread. I've needed this information. I've hunted for this information. This is awesome. But it doesn't always happen that way.
My advice to people coming to IMTS is bring some of your parts. Bring parts that were good, bring parts that are bad, bring prototypes, bring whatever you can bring, because it'll give you something you can stand there and hold and be like, look at this. Look,
Mm-hmm.
I really liked how this did this on this part. Or, wow, look at that gouge. That was bad. How do I fix that? And just be able
Mm-hmm.
to, like, yeah. If nothing else, like, we're all machinists. We love looking at parts, and it'll
Mm-hmm.
break any awkwardness, like, right away, immediately.
Yep.
Um, but also just having examples there of like what you're trying to do and what your problems are, or like being able to throw one of your own parts on their CMM or in a tumbler, like
Mm-hmm.
that's a thing you can do.
Unless Saunders walks off with it.
Yeah, unless Sandra steals your carabiner.
That's funny. Yeah. I might have to load up some parts then and bring them.
It's much easier for me to bring parts than for you to bring parts.
It is. It is. Oh, I'm trying to think. I don't got too much more. What else
Yeah,
you
my
got?
voice is, like I said, I've been talking to the camera all day, and my voice is about shot.
Gotcha. Well, I've got a lot of work coming up, and I'm stressed, and I'm probably going to be setting up a cot in the shop at some point. Because I got to get these parts machined, I got to get them tumbled, I got to get them anodized, I got to get them to them, and then once they've got those parts and they've confirmed they're good, then I got to machine the rest of them, and I've got less than 4 weeks to get it done. And anodizing takes, about a week. So, and I got to get anodized and sent over for them to inspect them as like a pre-run. So that's my biggest fear.
Well, good luck.
Thanks.
Buy a Speedio.
Yeah. And oh, I had something else and I lost it. Oh well. I guess it's outro time. Well, guys, thanks for hanging out with us on this particular podcast. Kind of fell apart a little bit there at the end, but hey, if something doesn't fall apart on our podcast, no, it didn't. That was good. Okay, maybe it was just me losing my thought on what I was needing. Anyways, thanks for hanging out with us, and this has been Harrison with Precision Ingenuity signing out with AJ from Audacity Micro. We'll be looking for you guys next week.
If we could all just take a moment of silence for my phone.